On a Friday night this fall in New Hampshire, we found Mike Huckabee playing bass in a strip mall bar. The next morning, we began our weekly series of conversations. In your judgment, does the scientific community basically think evolution is true, or do you think there's debate on that?
I think that there's probably overwhelming consensus in the scientific community that it's true.
On the Democratic side, we learned of John Edwards' struggle to earn a football scholarship at Clemson.
None of the coaches remembered him. Players I talked to remembered him as very quiet.
And an explanation for why some of Bill Clinton's former aides are backing Barack Obama.
And this guy said, you know, when I talk to Hillary, she always knows the answer. Her answers are fantastic. She always knows the answers. But she's not listening to me. She's not receiving anything from me. He said, when I talk to Obama, I feel here's an open-minded person.
Iraq continued to dominate headlines, and anti-war Congressman Charlie Rangel remained focused on withdrawal.
If everyone would agree that our presence has exploded, the presence of violence there, why wouldn't people believe that if we left, that violence will leave too? You know,
is that what you think? The violence will stop when we leave?
I don't know. But one thing is certain. We have no dog in that fight. None.
Iraqi exile Haifa Zangana took a different path to a similar conclusion.
The minute the occupying forces will be leaving with their corruption, with their manipulation, those people who were following them or working for them on the ground, especially Iraqis, okay, they either going to leave or they're going to be acting in a different way.
Joel Havenstein met me in Central Park hours after arriving from Afghanistan, and his years on the ground there convinced him of the need for continued American involvement.
If they don't feel like economically they're better off now than they were before, then we're going to lose them on that front too. If we just pull out of there, it will go back to being Al-Qaeda's playground. The troops' job there isn't done. It's an important job. And what we really need to be focusing on is providing security in Afghanistan, however long that may take.
On the other side of Asia, Burmese monks tried to incite change in the stifled country, but veteran protesters insisted the brutal ruling junta would have to be bargained with.
I'd like to make a comment about the military regime and how the Democrats are willing to talk. We have no choice because they're not going to go anywhere. They're like the largest institution in the country.
You're still saying, I think that I might be able to trust this person.
No, we are in the reality. Like Ahmad said, this 450,000 strong army will not disappear. They will be there. We have to work with them. We have to live with them. We have to work together with them. Then we're going to establish our anger and the fight going on for the future generation. That is why if we fight endless, then nobody will win.
Two young Americans in pursuit of change in Africa came to our attention. Scott Harrison founded Charity Water in an attempt to bring clean drinking water to the world's poor, after raising funds by selling some very expensive bottled water. Where did the idea of the $20 bottle come from?
I don't even remember how the idea came, but $20 seemed like the perfect sort of, screw you number. It's like, give us $20 for a bottle of water. But, we'll use all the money to build wells.
Meanwhile, Adam Sterling had been organizing a large-scale effort to divest American money from Sudan, but he was hesitant to support more radical forms of intervention. When you start throwing around a word like genocide, I think what goes with that word is serious action.
It's tough, and that's got to be one of my greatest frustrations, is that the rhetoric of never again is just, it's so obvious now. I mean, we've declared Darfur genocide, and you're right, I mean, our actions have not backed up our declaration at all.
This year, we also ventured beyond politics with a failed attempt to place blame for the ongoing writers' strike. Who is more in the right?
I wish I knew the answer to that. It's been very hard to tell, I think.
And an environmental journalist's thoughts on what remains of the global warming debate. As a reporter, do you feel an obligation to give equal time to people that say global warming has nothing to do with man, or are we past that point?
We're past that point because there isn't anyone with any authority saying that at this point.
The Interview Point brought me happily to the sites of this fall's World Series.
Programs, get your official programs in.
But it was two off-season issues that perhaps drew more attention. On the topic of performance-enhancing drugs, science professor and baseball fan Andy Andrews dispelled myths about the usefulness of HGH and danger of steroids.
When you look at the research, you actually go to the science and where they've done a design study to see just the impact of HGH on getting stronger, there's nothing there.
How bad are the side effects or long-term effects of steroids?
You know, people aren't really keeling over and dying from steroid usage, believe it or not, even though it's the public health has heard it's really huge side effects. People who take just small doses, all those physiological things that change, and there are a lot of things that change if you take steroids, they come back to normal. They snap back.
But memories of our first 3 months take us back to New Hampshire, where a charming former governor was quick to critique the media, even as he used it to his best advantage.
There's a greater sense in which the national media focuses on things that really aren't critical to being president.
I'm glad you brought this up because it was the last thing I wanted to ask. I loved seeing you play the bass last night. I was impressed that you played for a half hour and it wasn't a one-song photo op.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a photo op that's going to put you in Newsweek where talking about healthcare probably won't. That must be frustrating.
Sure it is. And it's also frustrating that national media wants to focus more on how much money have you got in the bank? And just because a guy's got some wealthy friends on Wall Street, I'm not sure that's who I want to be my president. I want a guy who understands what it's like to live in the real world and who has some ideas about bringing people together to solve the problems we face. But it is pretty cool to be able to play bass guitar.